Hello. This is a basic primer on brain health and cognition. I'm Lawrence Gold. I've been practicing clinical somatic education since 1990. It's a discipline for eliminating pain and stress through brain retraining. The $100 word for that is neuroplasticity, a term you've probably heard before. What it really reduces down to in simplicity is the brain's ability to learn and adapt. Simple as that. What I'm going to be doing in this little discourse is clarifying some terms and simplifying matters, and then I'm going to present to you a method of improving your own brain function and cognitive ability. The first thing I want to do is deal with the word cognitive because it's a $100 term, another one of those. Basically, it's our ability to know what's what. Cognition is our ability to know what's what. It has everything to do with memory. So the word recognition and cognition are obviously related. Recognition is simply the revisiting of something where we feel like we know what's what about it. Brain health. To me, the only intelligent approach to brain health is looking at it in terms of function. And the brain, as an organ of learning, has four basic functions. I'm going to go through those and simplify it all down. For now, let's just say that memory is not the entire game when it comes to cognition or brain health, even though it's an issue that people are commonly dealing with. You know, ADHD, memory loss, but there's also compulsive involvement, obsessive compulsive disorder, habits that persist past their useful term. All these are functions of memory. Memory is our way of knowing what's what, but it doesn't work by itself. Memory requires three other basic faculties of intelligence in order to operate. Everybody's got them, everybody uses them, but not everybody uses them all well. And this is the next topic that I'll cover, which has to do with the effects of stress on brain health and cognition. You'll see this condenses down into a nice, easily digestible understanding. Let's get back to cognition and memory. You see, we can't remember anything without putting attention on it, right? In order to memorize anything, typically, we put our attention on it with the intention to remember. So that means that intention and memory are related in common terms, and attention and memory are related. Here's the last faculty of attention, imagination. Even dogs have imagination. You ever see a dog asleep and dreaming? Dreaming, channel of imagination. In terms of cognition, what imagination does is show to ourselves how a certain experience is similar to something we remember. And by that means, we feel like we come to understand it to some degree. I say to some degree because information is unique from moment to moment. No setting, no situation repeats itself exactly. And so any way we have of understanding it is by making an approximate sense of things based on memory, connect with the present experience. That's how we understand what's going on, what's what. We're actually using imagination to stretch our sense of what is remembered to fit or include something that's happening before us. So we've got four powers of intelligence. I'm going to restate it, and then I'm going to go deeper into those for clarity. Those four powers are memory, attention, intention, and imagination. Now, those four work as a synergy, as a unified singularity. Can't pay attention without knowing what you're paying attention to. That means you have to remember what you're paying attention to. When we forget what we're paying attention to, that looks like attention deficit. Usually it's distraction. It's an imbalance between memory, attention, and intention, where Our efforts at memory may be very great because we've been trained by our educational system to emphasize memory above everything else. Or our intention is flaky, it's unstable, poorly defined, and as a result, our attention also doesn't stay on the item that we're trying to comprehend. Why? Because in order to pay attention to something, you must intend to pay attention, and you must have some sort of reason for paying attention. Reason is something we store in memory, but it's also the guideline for intention. Reason and intention go together. So we've got those four powers of intelligence, and people try to improve cognition by working on memory alone, and perhaps adding some extra horsepower, extra juice to attempts to remember. But memory isn't just a matter of remembering items, it's a matter of remembering relationships, how things interact, how things are organized with each other. Interaction is a function of intention. We intend to interact with somebody or something. Organization is the pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is essential to cognition. You don't recognize the pattern, you don't know what the heck you're looking at. And imagination is not sufficient to make sense of something if what we're experiencing is too far afield from what we have memories about it or about something similar to it. Now, I know I've delivered a pile of information to you just now, so let's take a little break here from this little section of the discourse and look at and feel into the powers of intelligence. As I said, there are four. Let's look at them each. We already got a start on this. Let's just carry it further. So attention involves always locating something. Attention is the great locator. When we get distracted, we are dislocated from the thing we were paying attention to. Make sense? Intuition is closely related to sensation. Sensation is generally about the external world, the five senses. Intuition is about our internal sense of things. Now, to clarify the term intuition, let me say that all of our senses come through the intuition channel. Attention and sensation go together. If I ask you, what does a pear taste like? You know, the fruit. You could say it tastes like this or tastes like that. You could say it's like an apple, only different. But frankly, it's ineffable. We can't define what a pear tastes like. It is what it is directly to our senses, and that's apprehended via intuition directly. Intuition is perception without the use and mediation of the thinking mind, without reasoning about it, without figuring. Intuition is direct apprehension. It's not a hunch. It's not yes or no answers. Intuition is direct feeling, perception of something that we're putting our attention on. Attention locates what we're putting our attention on. That location act is held in place by memory as long as we're intending to pay attention to something. It's always associated with some sort of intention. Why? Because without some sort of an intention, we have no impulse to pay attention to something. We have no intention, it's neutral to us, and we tend to overlook it. Now, attention also has the faculty of focusing, and focusing does not mean getting a really good look at something. You know, you've got to have focus. That's a misuse of the term. When we bring something into focus, we sharpen it. We sharpen the image enough to see its details. Focus is about the emergence of details. What people are usually talking about when we say focus is actually coherence. Coherence is the steadying of attention on something long enough that we can get an impression of it. And when we get an impression of it, that's called resonating with it. It's also, when we talk about it in terms of interpersonal relationships, it's rapport. It's the sharing of experience, not through the thinking mind, but intuitively as a felt thing. Likewise, attention is specific. We look at one thing at a time. Generally, the opposite of specific is something like multitasking, which is a fallacy. What there isn't multitasking. What there is rapid switching from item to item, which means that attention and memory have to reset again and again and again when we're multitasking. That involves a time lag, it slows us down, and it also overburdens our memory faculty. I'm going to make a side comment here. Problems with cognition generally have to do with problems of keeping attention on something long enough to see its details. And what we try to do is work harder. That doesn't work. Why? Because of the overload on memory. What happens when we get overloaded is we have too much throughput, too much demand on memory. And a memory has a saturation point. Memory has a saturation point. When we reach that saturation point, the new information coming in pushes out the old information. Now, by the way, that's one of the major faults I see among speakers who are delivering information. And you'll have felt it in my earlier part of this talk, which is that people say too much, too quickly, and don't give people enough time to absorb it. So what happens is the new information pushes out the old information, and a person feels like they've missed something, which they have. Time is necessary to absorb information. Timeliness is a function of intention. When you have an appointment, if you are good to your word, you have the intention to be on time. Without that, you're likely to be late or early. So timeliness is part of the process of absorbing information. Time is needed. What happens then is when we seek to remember something, is we're trying to dredge up a remembered pattern of experience by imagining it into existence. Here's an example. What's your phone number? What did you do just then? You reimagined it to yourself. Memory makes it easier to imagine something. Imagination makes it possible to remember something. If imagination is stalled, that means you can't bring any new information in. That means you'll have trouble remembering. If you have trouble remembering, you have trouble with cognition. Imagination and cognition go together. Cognition and imagination go together. Imagination is how we make sense of something by comparing it to something familiar to us. You get my drift here? These all four are related. So now I'm going to take you through a little experience in which you get a good look at each of the four powers of intelligence. It's very simple. I'm going to state some words which I call mind prompts, and those mind prompts are going to suggest experiences to you. And the experiences are going to be one of four at a time. The experience of paying attention, the experience of remembering, the experience of intending something, and the experience of imagining. As simple as that. When you hear the mind prompt, each time it comes, take it in. Notice anything it brings up in you, any experience, any memory, whatever comes up, steady your attention on it. Once your attention is steady, let go of whatever tension you can. I'll state this again in a moment. So you first get an impression of whatever comes up, put your attention on it, steady your attention, and then relax whatever way you can. Simple as that. Nothing to remember. You can't get it wrong, and not every step is going to bring something up. Just take whatever you get. Don't evaluate for correctness, and don't bother to try digging deeper. Just trust the process. Here we go. Pay attention to paying attention. Attending. Pay attention to paying attention. Attending. Pay attention to paying attention. Attending. Remember. Remember, remembering. Memory. Remember. Remember, remembering. Memory. Remember. Remember, remembering. Memory. Intend. Intend, intending. Intention. Intend. Intend, intending. Intention. Intend. Intend, intending. Intention. Imagine. Imagine, imagining. Imagination. Imagine. Imagine, imagining. Imagination. Imagine. Imagine, imagining. Imagination. Notice how your mind got quieter. Notice that some of those four were easier to grasp, were more accessible to you than others. This is where we go to the matter of brain health. Now, the brain has those four powers of intelligence. And just as an aside, they're localized in this way. There are two memory and activity repositories in the brain. One is called the default mode network. The default means happening automatically. Mode means a way of something happening. Network. And the default mode network is where habit lives. Automatic behaviors, familiar behaviors live. It's all of our adaptation, all of our acclimatization. The default mode network. The other main network lies in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and it's called the executive control network. Executive meaning execute or do. Control, just what the word implies, and network. And the executive control network is the channel through which new experience comes in, novelty comes in, intention operates. And it's how we deliberately learn. What comes in through the executive control network lands in the default mode network as a memory. The reason habits are difficult to change is because we're far more trained in memory than we are in imagination. You want to change a habit? Use your imagination. Use your imagination to envision or to create um, an experience of your intended state. Imagine how you would want to be. Each time you do it, you lay down a groove of memory that gets a little deeper. It's how you came to remember your phone number. You imagined it to yourself repeatedly until you could imagine it smoothly, operative word, smoothly, at which point it's gone from short-term memory into long-term memory. It's become part of the default mode network pattern or conditioning. So in terms of brain health, we have a clue here. Brain health has to do with a balance between and integration of those four powers of intelligence. If your imagination isn't working well, you'll have trouble remembering things. If memory is overbearing, it will drown out imagination, and with it, foresight, and with it, conscience. When imagination is overpowered by memory, foresight fades. We end up doing things the way we've always done them. And our attention tends to be stale because it's familiar. Anything that we experience over a period of time fades from our attention. It becomes background in the default mode network. Brain health has to do with the balance of those four. You ever given a public talk and lost your place? You had a memory gap? That's what happens when memory is not balanced with attention and intention. If you're giving a talk, your attention is supposed to be on the talk, and your intention is to deliver it. If memory fails, both stall. Brain health has to do with a balance between the four. Now, in that little exercise I took you through, you may have noticed that the four were not equally accessible to you. Even the word intention is vague for people because they acquire their intentions unconsciously by exposure to situations that require automatic responses. And the first time we don't do so well. So we get motivated to do better next time. That is to say, to emphasize memory more. Brain health involves the balance between the default mode network and the executive control network, where they are integrated with each other. That means that we can go from intending to remember something to actually remembering it and being able to put our attention on it and call up the memory at will. All that kind of smooth operation is what we experience as brain health. Now, you may take nootropics, that is, nutritional substances designed to help brain function, but those only provide the raw materials. The actual improvements come from the interaction of those four powers of intelligence I've been talking about. So it's not enough just to take nootropics. You've got to have intention clarified, memory up to speed, attention under your control, and freedom of imagination, the freedom to put your attention on something new at a moment's notice. Smooth operation. That's how we experience brain health. And that, because the brain is an organ of learning, can be improved by training our four powers of intelligence. The little exercise I took you through, if you repeat it a bunch of times, you'll notice that you're training your four powers of intelligence to work better with each other. As they become equally familiar to you and equally accessible, brain function smooths out. And what happens then is stress evaporates. Stress is the experience of the imbalance of our four powers of intelligence. Overwhelm is oversaturation of memory. Distraction of intention and attention. And the incapacity to imagine anything that we haven't already experienced. That's why we feel stuck in certain situations. We can't imagine a way out of it. Balance the four powers of intelligence, brain function improves, stress decreases, overwhelm evaporates, mind becomes clear, we become emotionally resilient. Resilience does not mean you can take any hit and stay remaining standing. If that's the case, it just means the hit wasn't that strong. Resilience is the ability to recover from those being knocked down situations. Life, being a highly tumultuous affair, tends to leave a lot of impressions in memory to the point where we become oversaturated. More than that, we're trying to retain our ability to remain ready for anything. Isn't that one of the definitions of maturity, being ready for anything? Well, it's absurd. What that does is simply lock us up in the stress of attempting to be ready for anything. And that stress tends to fade in the background over time so that it becomes automatic behavior, which is controlled by the default mode network and tends to overpower the executive control network unless we have developed the executive control network part of ourselves. That's intention and imagination. Again, exercises similar to what I took you through, where I told you pay attention to paying attention, remember remembering, intend intending, and imagine imagining, bring to life and balance and calibrate the four powers of intelligence so that we become capable of acting spontaneously in tune with the situation. Now, you may have noticed in this talk that there have been times where I faltered for a moment. I stopped talking to allow the thought to consolidate in my mind before speaking it. What you're seeing is spontaneous. This is completely unscripted. It's a completely spontaneous discourse, which becomes increasingly possible as we balance our four powers of intelligence. And in this offering, this summit, everyone offers something of benefit to you, and I have also. And you'll see links to download offerings that help you with your four powers of intelligence. And they set the stage for further refinement of your powers of intelligence. That's something that you'll learn more about if you download what I've offered in this summit. I'm Lawrence Gold. I hope you enjoyed this talk. I hope it rang some bells for you. And if you didn't get it all, no big surprise there. Listen to it again because it'll sink in better the second time through. Be well and eat your vegetables.